Imagine this, you've lived in the same bedroom your entire life. It's your space, your safe zone, decorated with posters, memories, little treasures that represent who you are. Then, one day, your parents walk in and tell you to pack up your things because your sister deserves that room more than you. That's what happened to me. My own family decided I wasn't worthy of my own space anymore. They gave my room to my younger sister and told me to deal with it. I can't even describe the level of betrayal I felt at that moment. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But as life would prove, it turned out to be the best thing they ever did, because years later, the tables flipped completely. The same family who kicked me out of my room ended up begging me for a place to stay. How did I go from being thrown aside like I didn't matter, to becoming the owner of the very house they needed? Let me take you on the journey. Growing up, I always knew my sister was the favorite. Let's call her Emily. She was 2 years younger than me, and somehow everything she did seemed to sparkle in my parents' eyes. If she got A, B, on her report card, it was, great effort, Emily. If I got an A, it was, why not an A+. I wasn't jealous of her, at least not at first. I thought maybe that's just how parents are sometimes. But over the years, the favoritism became impossible to ignore. She got the newest clothes, the best gadgets, the extra dessert at dinner, while I learned to settle for whatever was left. But the breaking point came when I was 16. I had a room at the back of the house, small, but cozy. I had spent years making it mine. Posters of my favorite bands lined the walls, books stacked by the bed, a little desk where I studied late into the night. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then one evening, my parents called me into the living room. My mom had that serious look on her face, while my dad avoided eye contact. Emily sat there with her arms folded, smirking like she already knew what was coming. Listen, my mom began. Emily needs more space. She's older now, and she needs a bigger room. We've decided she's going to move into your room. At first, I thought it was a joke. What? That's my room. You'll be fine in the smaller one, my dad said quickly, as if that settled it. The smaller one? You mean the box room? The one we use for storage? It's just temporary, Mom lied. Besides, Emily deserves more comfort. She studies hard. I felt my chest tighten. I studied hard. I had better grades than Emily. I worked part-time at a local cafe after school. But none of that mattered. This isn't fair, I shouted. Life isn't fair, my dad snapped back. Stop being selfish. Selfish. That word hit me like a knife. They were taking my space, giving it to my sister, and I was the selfish one. Within a week, my posters were ripped down, my desk shoved into the cramped storage room, and Emily was moving into what used to be my sanctuary. She paraded around like she'd won a prize. Finally, a room that actually fits me, she said with a grin, while I sat surrounded by boxes in my new room, which felt more like a closet. I remember lying awake that first night in the tiny space, staring at the ceiling, feeling invisible. My own parents had chosen her comfort over my dignity. That's when the seed of determination was planted. I didn't know how or when, but I swore to myself that one day, things would change. When I turned 18, I didn't last long at home. I scraped together some savings from my cafe job and moved into a tiny apartment near campus when I started college. It wasn't glamorous, peeling paint, noisy neighbors, and rent that ate up almost everything I earned, but it was mine. Those first few years were brutal. While Emily had her college fully paid for by our parents, I juggled classes with multiple part-time jobs. I waited tables, worked at a bookstore, even did late-night shifts at a gas station. There were nights I came home so exhausted I barely had the energy to eat. Sometimes dinner was just instant noodles or whatever leftovers I could take home from work. I remember once sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment, eating cold pizza, and thinking, at least no one can take this space away from me. Meanwhile, Emily lived the life of luxury. New car on her birthday. Summer vacations abroad. When she complained about her Wi-Fi being slow, my parents rushed to upgrade her plan. When I asked if they could help me with textbooks, they said I needed to learn responsibility. And you know what? As bitter as I felt, that struggle shaped me. Every bill I paid, every meal I cooked for myself, every dollar I stretched, it built resilience. I was learning independence, while Emily was being spoon-fed everything. One Thanksgiving, I went back home for dinner. I hadn't been back much since moving out. Walking past my old room, Emily's room now, I noticed how she'd redecorated. New paint, fancy furniture, all bought by my parents. It stung, but instead of crying, I smiled to myself. Because I realized something, she had the room, but I had freedom. After college, things started to shift. I landed an entry-level job at a small real estate office. At first, it was just answering phones and filing paperwork. But I paid attention. I listened to agents making deals, learned about mortgages, property values, and investments. Something clicked. Real estate wasn't just about houses, it was about opportunity. I started taking online courses, reading every book I could find about investing. While my coworkers spent weekends partying, I saved every penny. After 2 years, I scraped together enough for a down payment on a modest condo. It wasn't huge, but signing those papers felt like reclaiming power. I owned something. From there, I hustled harder. I rented out the condo and used the income to cover part of the mortgage. A couple years later, I bought another property. Then another. Slowly but surely, I was building something real. Meanwhile, Emily's life took a different turn. Despite all the help from my parents, she never quite figured things out. She switched majors 3 times, dropped out for a while, burned through money like it grew on trees. She got used to being rescued, but there comes a point where even parents can't keep saving you. By my late 20s, I had built a small portfolio of rental properties. Nothing flashy, but stable. My parents still treated me like the lesser child, but I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth. I had built my life from scratch, while Emily was still leaning on them like a crutch. Then came the day I never expected. It was a Saturday morning when my phone rang. I saw my mom's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken much beyond polite check-ins. I answered. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice unusually shaky. We need to talk." Turns out, my parents were in financial trouble. Dad's business had gone under, debts were piling up, and they couldn't keep up with the mortgage. They were losing the house. I was silent for a moment. The same house where they had once told me I didn't deserve my own room. Then Mom dropped the real bombshell. "We heard you own some properties. We were wondering if, maybe, we could rent from you." Just for a while. I almost laughed. Rent from me. A week later, we met to discuss it. Sitting across from them at the table, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, pride, a strange sense of justice. Emily was there too, looking down at her phone, avoiding eye contact. "So, what do you think?" Dad finally asked. "We just need a place until we get back on our feet." I took a deep breath. "Well, it's funny you ask. Because the property you've been looking at, the one you want to rent, it's mine. I own it." The look on their faces was priceless. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad's eyes widened. Emily actually gasped. For the first time in my life, I had the upper hand. I won't lie, I felt a surge of satisfaction. The same people who once told me I was selfish for wanting my own room were now at my mercy. I had 2 choices: slam the door in their faces, or let them stay, but on my terms. I thought about that night in the tiny storage room, the years of struggle, the cold pizza dinners, the sleepless nights. And then I thought about who I had become because of all that. So I said, "You can rent from me. But this time, you'll follow my rules." They nodded quickly, desperate. In the end, I wasn't cruel. I charged them fair rent, nothing more, nothing less. But I made it clear, this was my property. My house. My rules. And every time I visited, every time I saw Emily sulking in what was now my space, I couldn't help but smile. Because in the end, they took my room away, but I gained the whole house. And that's how the story went full circle. From being pushed aside as if I didn't matter, to becoming the very person my family had to turn to for shelter. Sometimes, life has a way of serving justice in ways you could never imagine. So tell me, what would you have done? Would you have let them stay? Or would you have turned them away after everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'd love to know how you'd handle it. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more tales of betrayal, karma, and sweet revenge, only here on Revenge with Laraa. Because in the end, betrayal always gets what it deserves.